Salam everyone, peace, it's me again. So we're going to continue from where we left off. We talked that we came to a pivot point, still in the topic about refugees, but we came to a pivot point. So let's talk about what situation we ran into here. So the years of refugee exodus, 1967 and 1970 to 1971, were also years of internal crises. Before I get to that, I want to read the footnote regarding the Tigray-speaking Sudanese on the other side of the border. So, on the Sudanese side of things. So there are a few Tigray-speaking Sudanese in the Karora Tokar area. They migrated in the 19th century. So the 1800s, they migrated in the 19th century from the Habab in Sahel, to work in cotton plantations in Tokar, Sudan. So they're from Eritrea, what became known as Eritrea anyway. So, okay. The years of refugee exodus, 1967 and 1970 to 1971, were also years of internal crises for the ELF. During the first period, a few fighters, Kabasans by origin, meaning the people who came from the highlands, southern highlands, where bordering Ethiopia. Well, that area borders Ethiopia. They left the front partly because of a generalized tension and ethno-religious distrust caused by the zonal commanders of the army. So they left the front partly because of a generalized. So during the first period, a few fighters left the front partly because of a generalized tension and ethno-religious distrust caused by the commanders of the army. The commanders caused an issue. I told you that I blame the revolutionaries for the issues, that for why we have a dictator. It was the revolutionaries, not every single one of them, no, but people who had significant positions and those who followed them blindly. The second period also witnessed a similar period of fear and conflict, which gave birth to factionalism. So during the first period of the refugee exodus, there was an issue, and the second period also witnessed a similar period of fear and conflict, which gave birth to factionalism. Now we have factions. So I have a table in front of me whose contents I can read out to you. It's called table 1. It's table 1 here on page 71 in the text. Table 1, total number of Ethiopian, red Eritrean refugees in the Sudan. In the Sudan, they called it Eritrean refugees, but it's titled Ethiopian, likely because the UNHCR considered Eritreans at the time Ethiopian, which we are not. If you're referring to Ethiopia by that entity which exists today, under the rulers that are there, if that's what you mean by Ethiopia, then that's not us. If you're referring to Ethiopia, meaning if you want to refer to the blacks south of, if you want to refer to Black Africa, then that's us. If you want to refer to Ethiopians as being, as being Africans as a whole, then that's us. But Ethiopia in the modern, what we understand to be Ethiopia now is that country. And I want to say to those who speak about Islamic history, and you say Ethiopian, I have to tell you that we're not all. So when you want to mention Habasha, when you want to translate Habasha to English, Ethiopia is not accurate. Say Abyssinia. Ethiopia is not accurate because we're not Ethiopians. We're not all Ethiopians. Just because that's the only country you may have heard of, or that's the largest country in the region, or whatever, I don't know. Your reason doesn't mean that that's what. And many of you may not know. Many may not. They may say, "Oh, I didn't know that." That's fine. But I'm telling you that you must use the proper terminology, because Ethiopia is not. There are people who don't approve of this, who are occupiers of the land, meaning people who are inhabitants rather of the land, not occupiers. Occupier would sound like they're oppressors, but you get what I mean. They're inhabitants. So kindly, humbly, sincerely, I am telling you not to use the term Ethiopia to refer to that. Now, if you want to use the term Ethiopia, when you say Ethiopia, you want to refer to you want to use an older terminology, I understand. But in this age, if you say Ethiopia, you're talking about a flag which, even if the flag changed, it wouldn't make a difference, but a country whose flag is red, yellow, and green. And that flag and that entity known as Ethiopia today, which consists of stolen land, we have nothing to do with that place except that which was forced upon us as Eritreans. And it's not just us. It's people of, it's the region of Tigray, and the Oromo region, and the Somali region, Ogaden region. These are not, the Somalis are not Ethiopians. They're not Ethiopians. You have to return to the question, what is an Ethiopian? Because if you ask the Somali from Ogaden, the chances are that he'll tell you, I'm not Ethiopian, I'm Somali. One might say, well, it's a state in Ethiopia. Yeah, but it's not, they're not Ethiopians. They don't identify as Ethiopian. Neither do the Oromo, many of them, not all of them. Go to the history. Talk to the history, which involves Menelik, about 140 years ago or so. So, total number of Ethiopian, Red Eritrean refugees in the Sudan, 1967 to 1986. 1967, 28,600 refugees. So 1967, in the Sudan, 28,600 refugees. 1968, 31,000 refugees. 1969, 31,000 refugees. 1970, 55,000 refugees. Big jump. 1970, 55,000. 1971, 54,500. 1972, 52,500. 1973, 46,000. 1974, 49,000. It went down. 1975, 85,500. 1975, 85,500. 1976, 105,000 refugees. 1977, 145,000. 1978, 270,000. 1979, 346,000. 1981, 419,000. 1982, 419,000. 1983, 460,000. 1984, 465,000. 1986, 772,000. Almost a million. 772,000 refugees living in the Sudan. Eritrea, that population of refugees, that number relative to the Eritrean population, that's a lot. But a war is a war, you know? So, the sources, reports of the UNHCR, General Assembly official records, 23rd to 37th session, A, UNHCR Information Sudan, August 1982, number 4, Branch Office Khartoum, B, Usman, ETAL, the outcome of ICARA, I don't know what ETL means. This is something, it's okay, there are things that we don't know. The outcome of ICARA, 1984, and C, UNHCR briefing note, 25th of July, 1986. Given the absence of frontier checkpoints, given the absence of frontier checkpoints and general population control in the Sudan until very recently, relative to 1992, when this text was published. Until very recently, it was difficult to know who is who in the country. It was difficult to know who's who. So, because of the absence of border checkpoints and general population control in the Sudan until very recently, it was difficult to know who is who in the country, or how many refugees arrived from Eritrea at a given time. The above figures are therefore very rough estimates. Very rough estimates. Let's continue. The 2 years preceding the revolution in Ethiopia were not refugee-producing years in Eritrea. In fact, as shown on Table 1, the number of Eritrean refugees in the Sudan decreased from 52,000 in 1972 to 46,000 in 1973. But a sharp upward trend was to continue unabated for over a decade. But a sharp upward trend which was to continue unabated for over a decade started with the new developments that unfolded in Ethiopia beginning in early 1974. So there's a reason for why. There's always a reason for things. So there's a reason. Yes. So. But a sharp upward trend, which was to continue unabated for over a decade, started with the new developments that unfolded in Ethiopia beginning in early 1974. During the first 15 years, 1961 to 1975, of the armed struggle, therefore, the fighters in the Eritrean liberation struggle and the refugees of the war had clearly identifiable ethno-religious composition. Well over 90% of them were Muslims, mainly from the Western lowlands. From the Western lowlands, the Northern highlands, and Eastern lowlands, as well as Saho and Jabarti Muslims from Kabasa. Because don't forget, Kabasa is not just made of the Tigrinya brothers and sisters, it's also made of Sahos and Jabartis, who are mainly Muslim. I would say they're 100% Muslim. Saho, by the way, I'm not sure if they are the same tribe as the Irob, but they share the same language. They both speak Saho. I believe even the Irob speak Saho. In Eritrea, the tribe is called Saho. In Ethiopia, in Tigray, they're called Irob. But even in Eritrea, they have, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it's clans or subgroups, but they have like Asaorta, and different groups among the Saho. So, during the first 15 years, 1961 to 1975 of the armed struggle, therefore, the fighters in the Eritrean liberation struggle and the refugees of the war had clearly identifiable ethno-religious composition. Well over 90% of them were Muslims, mainly from the Western lowlands, so like Karan, Agordat, and I believe the Barka, Gash Barka is included, and the Sahel, Masawa, these areas, the northern highlands, the eastern lowlands. So I would understand that to mean the Dankalia area, Afar area, as well as Afar territory, as well as Saho and Jabarti Muslims from Kabasa, the highlands, the southern highlands. The number of Eritrean refugees and migrant workers in the Middle East was growing steadily. By the early 1970s, the students in Egypt and the Sudan were, at the completion of their courses, either joining the liberation struggle or going to the oil-rich states looking for work. Many others in Eritrea used the annual Hijrah pilgrimage or Hajj pilgrimage. I don't think it says Hijrah, but Hijrah means migration. But Hajj, I believe, is the intended word. I believe Hajj, meaning they used the Hajj pilgrimage, which is the annual pilgrimage that Muslims embark on. Some do it every year, but a Muslim has to do it at least once in his life if he's able to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca. So the students in Egypt and the Sudan at the completion of their courses, either joining the liberation struggle or going to the oil-rich states looking for work. Many others in Eritrea used the annual, it says Hijrah pilgrimage or Hajj pilgrimage, to issue visas to Saudi Arabia and later manage their way to stay outside home. That growing community of students and migrant workers was gradually becoming a pull factor. It was to become a more effective magnet in the uprooting process when the security situation in Eritrea worsened. So this growing community of students and migrant workers was gradually becoming a pull factor. It was used to become a more effective magnet in the uprooting process when the security situation in Eritrea worsened. So basically, it would be the cause of a heightened number of refugees. Very sad situation. That concludes our chapter on the Exodus, the migration of the first and second Exodus, rural Exodus of Eritrean refugees. As you can see, war leads to nothing good, but it was inevitable. You can't expect to control a people with an iron fist and not expect anything in return. You think that they're just going to sit down the whole time? You think they're just going to take it the whole way through? No, it's not going to happen. So look at Ethiopia now. Ethiopia had, so from the end of the revolution against Ethiopia, from that point when Ethiopia was taken over by the TPLF, until you can say, 1998, there was a war over at the border. That was a bloody war. But it was not due to a person's tyranny. It was between governments, which sadly, cost. It cost lives, soldiers, civilians. But I would say, because I'm not too familiar with recent Ethiopian history. Recent meaning during the 2000s, the early 2000s. But I would say until Meles died, there was no war. And then when Abiy came, he tried to do the same thing that Mengistu did before him and Haile Selassie. And now look at what's going on. Huge crisis in Ethiopia. Do you blame the people or do you blame the government? People responded. But unfortunately in Ethiopia, because the place is made of people forced to live together, Eritrea is different. Eritrea was under Italians and they endured a common struggle and they learned about how they're similar. But unfortunately, even Eritreans went through divisions, which we will see in this text. It's an honest truth. But Ethiopia, similar situation. When you end up with people who don't want to be a part of this entity because you stole my land, you forced your ways against me on my land, and you're murdering my people, you're imprisoning them, you're doing this, oppressing them in many different ways. You cannot have a peaceful life there. You cannot have salam. Salam means peace. You cannot have it. You can't have it. How can you have peace in a place where people are uncomfortable? So it's a very sad situation. People don't want war. the average person doesn't want war, but there are those out there who are starving for power to their tribe, to their, they want power for their tribe, for their region. There are people like that. I'm not going to say and mention any names and open up a new subject in this program, but I could if I want to. But there are specific people, who are like this, and they know who they are, and others know who I'm talking about. And I'm not being biased, I'm being real. So, in any case, that concludes that chapter. Now, next chapter that we have arrived at, the chapter we have arrived at is chapter 6, Armed Struggles and Refugees, Phase 2, 1975 to 1991. So now we're coming on the we have basically arrived at the middle of the war, you can say. Well, middle towards the end. So let's see what's in store for us next we meet. Be safe always. Take care. May God protect you and bless you all. I'll see you next time, God willing.